Welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I hope you've been enjoying the series. And today I am so thrilled to have another guest with me, a discerning reader and a discerning writer. But as you know, I'm Karen E. Osborne. I'm the author of Getting It Right, and my upcoming murder mystery, women's fiction, Tangled Lies, which comes out on July 22nd. Let me tell you a little bit about Jim, how I know him. So I know him as a landlord. And we got the pleasure, my husband Bob and I had the pleasure of staying in his lovely, lovely home in Westchester County, New York. And we just kind of found out that we both were writers, and I loved his bookcases and all of his books. And so I thought, oh, he would be such a good guest for you to meet and talk about his reading and his writing. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Nice to be here.
Or did we agree that I'm going to call you James today? I forgot.
You can call me James, Jim, doesn't matter.
James, Jim, he writes under both names.
That's right.
So before we talk about your latest project and your past projects, maybe we could start with you sharing a book recommendation with our audience.
So you want to know what I'm reading right now? Right now I'm reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm reading 7 books right now. So
you have to pick 2.
So I'm reading, the first one is Elizabeth Sargent's biography of Robert Frost called The Trial by Existence. She wrote it in 1960. So that's really the thing that I'm reading the most right now. I'll just tick off the others. There's a Jeffrey Myers biography of Frost that he wrote in 1996. There's a volume of letters that Frost wrote to a number of people. This is volume 1 of 3. I'm reading that. I've always got a copy of poetry of Robert Frost. I have University of Mississippi Press did 3 volumes of essays about Frost. This is volume 3. I'm working my way through that. And then I've got another book called The Rabbi's Wife that was written by Shuly Schwartz. So I'm reading this, and then I'm reading a book on golf course architecture by Tom Doak. But as you can tell, there's a pretty heavy Robert Frost theme here with the work that I'm doing right now.
So tell me about that. Why Robert Frost?
So I'm in the process of writing a play, and the play came about because Frost, in 1938, his wife died. Eleanor had been his inspiration for everything. So she died that March. She got cancer and died. And he was in a funk. He was in a complete depressed state. And that fall, he met a rabbi in Ohio. And the rabbi became his best friend. And for the last 25 years of Frost's life, the rabbi was really trying to answer questions for Frost. Frost had a Jobian life. His father died when he was young. His wife died when she was young. One of his kids committed suicide. Another was committed. He had a tough life. He had a very Jobian existence. And the rabbi was a Jobian scholar. So the rabbi was also a poet. The rabbi also published poetry. So the rabbi had the connection with Frost from the standpoint of being friends with the best poet of the 20th century. Frost with the rabbi was getting answers to life. Why does this happen to me? Does God exist? Is there life after death? They talked a lot about freedom. They talked a lot about baseball. And I started playing around with this a couple of years ago as an idea. And I decided that this would work. And there have been books written about them. There was a book written in 1994 by a guy named Andrew Marks called The Rabbi and the Poet. I began playing around with this a couple of years ago. I've never written a play before. I've written 6 nonfiction books, but never been a playwright before. But I started playing with the idea, and the idea is I'm working on a 2-act play, and it's titled The Rabbi, the Poet, and Louise. And Louise is the rabbi's wife. And they talked a lot about the themes that I just talked about, such as freedom. They talked a lot about baseball. They talked a lot about the existence of God. They delved into Frost's beliefs about God. Frost was a great friend of the Kennedy family, and he was a big supporter of Jack Kennedy. Frost, as you know, was the first poet to read a poem at the presidential inauguration. And that's the whole story in and of itself. Kennedy, in the early 60s, at the height of the Cold War, was getting nowhere with Khrushchev. His ambassadors weren't getting through to him, his diplomats weren't, and Khrushchev was on a mission to destroy the world, and starting with the United States. So Kennedy sent Frost over. Kennedy sent the 88-year-old poet over to meet with Nikita Khrushchev. And during those talks, Frost got through to him, and Frost somehow connected with Khrushchev and convinced him to drop the hostility, to save the world. Jeffrey Myers, in his biography, goes into that a lot. And there was a review written of Jeffrey Myers' book in 1996 by Walter Kern in New York Magazine. And in it, Kern says, Robert Frost, the poet who saved mankind. So who would have thunk it, right? That a poet would save mankind. But Frost was around to do that because the rabbi kept him going. The rabbi nursed him through these periods of depression, kept him going intellectually, got him actually more active intellectually as he got older. So Frost was around to save mankind because of the rabbi. And the rabbi met Frost in 1938 because the rabbi's wife, Louise, who by the way, was very interesting in her own right, she had graduated Smith College in 1928. She was accepted to medical school at the University of Cincinnati. She would have been first woman in that class, but she met the rabbi that summer, and they were engaged within 6 weeks. And the congregation said to her, temple in Cincinnati, Ohio, called Rockdale Temple, the congregation said to her, you can't be both a Rebbitzin and a doctor. You got to choose. So she
Story of
gave
our
up her
lives. The history of women.
she gave up her medical career to further her husband's interests. So Frost is around to save mankind, to prevent World War III. He's around because the rabbi kept him going, and they met because the brilliance of the rabbi's wife, Louise. So if you take the causation back, in essence, World War III was prevented because of the rabbi's wife.
Wow. So what's going to be the focus? I mean, this is a lot of history. And if you're trying to put this into a 2-act play, what's your focus?
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of different themes here. There's the juxtaposition of an urban Midwestern rabbi who becomes best friends with this crusty New England poet. There's the issue of Frost loved seeing the flag fly. He called it Old Glory. He loved seeing Old Glory. And how would he feel in this day and age when there are people who look at the American flag as maybe representing something that might not be just freedom? It may be representing something that Frost would not have liked. There's the theme of just spending time in the woods. One of the things that the rabbi always said was each day you should take a long walk, read a good book, and make a true friend. Every day you should take a long walk, use your body, read a good book, use your mind, make a true friend. Life is only really worth living with good friendships. And that's a big head fake in this. Like, it's like when I was raising my kids were into sports and I had them playing sports, but it's not because I wanted my daughter played tennis. It's not because I wanted her to play at Wimbledon. My son played baseball. It's not because I wanted my son to play in the major leagues. They needed something to do after school so they wouldn't get in trouble or just sit in the room. So the head fake for my kids was my kids needed something to do. Sports was the activity. The head fake here to the audience is I want people to walk away from this thinking that yeah, I should slow things down a little bit. I should take a long walk.
Mhm.
I should put put the devices down. I should read a good book. Do I really need 5,000 friends on Facebook when I don't know who 75% of them are, as opposed to having just a few good friends? That's a real head fake here. And the rabbi, going back to some of his sermons from 1938, and I've read some of them, he talks about how fear and anxiety are so prevalent in the world. Those words could have been spoken this morning. So these are all themes in here. um,
Yeah.
and and the play is really designed to get the audience to understand a little bit about who Robert Frost was, also for them to understand what Frost thought about religion. It's also designed for them to follow a really fascinating story where you have a housewife who, because of the causation of her in 1938, realizing that her rabbi husband needs to be friends with Robert Frost, that it ultimately saves mankind. These are all interesting themes, but it's kind of like it's like if you said to a 20-year-old, here, learn about Alexander Hamilton. Here's a 750-page book. It's written by this guy, Ron Chernow. It's really good. Read it. You'll learn about Alexander Hamilton. The 20-year-old's going to say, I'm not going to do that. But if you say, go watch this play, right? Go see this musical, then they'll learn something about Hamilton. So that's those are sort of, I Venn diagram the whole thing, and I try to distill it down to the essential parts, and
I
that's
love it.
that's that's where I am.
What a wonderful, wonderful story. And I remember us talking about this last summer. It's fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to your play and seeing your play. Are you almost finished? Are you in the middle? Where are you?
I've finished the first act, so the first act is done.
Hmm.
I finished the end. I've written the last words of it. So it's in that sense, it's kind of like my life. Like, I know how my life's going to end, right? So I'm trying to sort out the pieces in between, and do I do flashbacks? Do I how do I really keep the story rich? But I've got it at the point where, like a big thing that I've learned in becoming a playwright is, when the intermission comes, it's not a good idea to have the audience just wander away thinking they already know what's going to happen in the second act. So it's really building up that dramatic tension. So that's where I am with this, and it's like, it's like, how does the artist know when the painting doesn't need any more brush strokes of paint? It's I'm trying to feel my way through it,
Hmm.
and there's a number of different ways I can go. There's so many different ways, like, I could skin this cat so many different ways, and it's just really trying to figure my way through this, and just pull through a lot of the material. There's been so much written on Frost, right? There's so many Frostian scholars out there. He's probably been studied as much as any American writer, and I'm not trying to do something that a tenured professor of poetry at Harvard or University of Virginia is going to be impressed by, right? Or a tenured professor of poetry at Michigan or Dartmouth, someplace like that. They're not going to be impressed by this, but that's not who this is for.
That's
This
not
is
your audience.
for, right, right. This
Yeah.
is for, I'd love to see it get big enough where a billion eyeballs can see this, because I think it has so much relevance, and I think in a lot of ways it can really help people, just from the standpoint of, yeah, I mean, I should get outside more. I should read more. I should just slow down.
And make true friendships, deep friendships.
Right.
I
Not
love
these
that.
ersatz. Right.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Right.
That's wonderful. If our audience wanted to be in touch with you, I bet they have lots of questions. What would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
So the best way, I don't have a website right now for this piece. It's premature for that,
Hmm.
but you can email me, and you can email me at jim@reichertventuresco.com.
Could you
It's
spell right? Mhm.
Reichert venturesco.com. So jim@reichertventuresco.com. You can email me there, and I'll eventually get back to people. You can also go to I have a LinkedIn page, just under my name, under James Reichert. Those are really, I mean, it's a primitive way to do it right now, but it's just where I am in this process.
No, it's absolutely perfect. And you can find me at KarenEOsborne.com. You can find me on my author Facebook page, Karen E. Osborne, author. And you can, like Jim, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every single day, and I'm Karen E. Osborne on LinkedIn. I want to thank you, Jim, for joining us. And I want to thank all of you for listening. And we hope to see you next time for What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing?
Thanks, Karen.